Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. In the heart of a vast and ancient land where magic was as common as the wind, every soul was bound to a unique artifact known as the soul mirror. These mirrors weren't mere reflections of one's physical appearance, they revealed the deepest truths of a person's inner self and their hopes, fears, memories, and emotions. For most, the soul mirror was a silent companion, a constant yet unobtrusive presence. But for Alissa, it was about to become the key to a journey she never anticipated. Alissa was a young adventurer with a spirit as untamed as the wild horses that roamed the plains. She had eyes the color of emeralds and a mane of fiery red hair that she rarely bothered to tame. Orphaned at a young age, she learned to rely on no one but herself, exploring uncharted territories and seeking the thrill of the unknown. Yet, beneath her fearless exterior lay a reservoir of suppressed emotions and unhealed wounds she refused to acknowledge. One crisp morning, with the sun just peeking over the horizon, Alissa set out to explore the Whispering Mountains, a place few dared to tread. Legend spoke of ancient spirits and hidden treasures, and such tales were irresistible to her. The mountain air was thin, and the paths were treacherous, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had long made peace with danger. As she ventured deeper into the mountains, she stumbled upon a hidden path veiled by overgrown vines and twisted branches. Intrigued, she pushed aside the foliage to reveal the entrance of an ancient cave. The air around it was different, charged with an energy that made the tiny hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Ignoring the unease that gnawed at her gut, she stepped inside. The cave was a labyrinth of shimmering crystals and luminescent flora. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing softly with a light that had no discernible source. As she navigated the winding tunnels, she felt an odd pull, as if something was guiding her deeper into the heart of the mountain. Finally, she entered a vast chamber where a pool of water lay undisturbed at its center. Drawn to the pool, Alissa knelt beside it and peered into its depths. Her reflection stared back, but something was off. The eyes that looked up at her weren't her own, they were filled with a sorrow and fear she didn't recognize. Startled, she reached out to touch the surface. The moment her fingers grazed the water, a violent tremor shook the cave. Crystals shattered, and the ground beneath her cracked open. She tried to leap back, but it was too late. A blinding light engulfed her as she fell into the abyss. When she awoke, she was lying at the mouth of the cave, the sun hanging low in the sky. Dazed, she sat up and instinctively reached for the pouch where she kept her soul mirror. Her heart plummeted when she felt the shards within the mirror had shattered. Panic surged through her veins. Without the mirror's integrity, one's sense of self could unravel. She clutched the broken pieces, her mind a whirlwind of confusion. Making her way back to her village was a blur. The familiar paths seemed foreign, and time slipped through her fingers like sand. When she finally reached her cottage, exhaustion overtook her. She collapsed onto her bed, hoping that sleep might bring clarity. Instead, she was plunged into a torrent of fragmented dreams and memories she had long buried, faces she had forgotten, and emotions she had suppressed. Over the following days, Alissa's world spiraled into chaos. She couldn't distinguish between reality and illusion. She would find herself in the marketplace, only to blink and be back in her cottage without any recollection of how she got there. Friends approached her with concern, but their words sounded distant, muffled by the cacophony in her mind. She tried to explain, but how could she make them understand when she didn't understand herself? Desperate for answers, she sought out Alissa, a wise elder known for her knowledge of ancient magics. Alissa listened intently as Alissa recounted her experience. When Alissa revealed the shattered soul mirror, a shadow passed over the elder's face. "This is grave indeed," Alissa said softly. "The soul mirror is not just a reflection, it's the vessel of your inner world. When it breaks, the barriers within you collapse. Memories, emotions, fears, they all intermingle without order. Is there a way to fix it?" Alissa's voice wavered, betraying the fear she tried so hard to conceal. "There is a way, but it's fraught with peril," Allowin cautioned. You must enter the realm created by the mirror's fragments, a dreamscape of your own making. There, you'll face trials that embody your deepest wounds and fears. Only by confronting and overcoming them can you restore the mirror and, in turn, yourself. Alissa's mind raced. The thought of delving deeper into the chaos that already threatened to consume her was terrifying. Yet, the alternative was to let her sense of self continue to disintegrate. Summoning every ounce of courage, she nodded. Tell me what I need to do. Allowin guided her through an ancient ritual. As dusk settled, they prepared a circle adorned with runes and lit by candles whose flames danced unnaturally high. At the center lay the shattered pieces of the soul mirror. Chanting incantations in a language long forgotten, Allowin signaled Alissa to close her eyes. A sensation of weightlessness enveloped her, and when she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the village. She stood in a landscape both familiar and alien. The sky was a swirl of colors, and the ground beneath her feet shifted like sand yet felt solid. Structures rose and fell in the distance, morphing from mountains to forests to cities in the blink of an eye. She realized she was in the dreamscape, a place where her thoughts and emotions shaped reality. No sooner had she taken a step than the scenery changed. She found herself in a quaint cottage that she instantly recognized that it was her childhood home. The scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, and the sound of laughter echoed from the rooms ahead. Drawn to the warmth, she moved forward but hesitated at the doorway. Peering inside, she saw her younger self, no more than 8 years old, sitting at a table with her parents. They looked happy, unburdened by the tragedies that would later befall them. A pang of longing shot through her. She hadn't allowed herself to think of them in years, the pain too great to bear. Come join us, Alissa. Her mother called, looking directly at her. Stunned, she stepped into the room. You can see me, of course, dear. Where else would you be? Her father chuckled. Confusion and joy welled up inside her. She wanted to embrace them, to freeze this moment in time. But as she reached out, the scene darkened. The laughter turned to cries, and the walls began to crumble. Flames erupted, consuming everything. She was no longer a spectator but was reliving the night her parents died in a fire that razed their home. Why didn't you save us? A voice whispered from the engulfing darkness. I was just a child. She screamed, tears streaming down her face. Yet you've carried this guilt all these years, the voice accused. The weight of her suppressed blame bore down on her. She had spent so long running from this pain, masking it with adventures and bravado. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. As she allowed herself to fully feel the grief and guilt, the flames subsided. The ruins transformed into a serene meadow, a place of peace. A soft voice, her mother's, whispered on the wind, it's time to let go. She sat in the grass, letting the tranquility wash over her. For the first time, she acknowledged her pain without trying to suppress it. A fragment of the soul mirror appeared beside her, glowing softly. She picked it up, sensing that she had passed the first trial. Rising to her feet, she braced herself for what lay ahead. The meadow faded, and she found herself in a dense forest shrouded in mist. Shadows darted between the trees, and the atmosphere grew oppressive. A sense of dread settled in her stomach. She knew this place not from her memories, but from her nightmares. A low growl echoed through the woods. From the shadows emerged a colossal beast, its form shifting between that of a wolf and a serpent. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its fangs dripped with venom. This was the embodiment of her deepest fears. Instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. The beast lunged, and she narrowly dodged its attack. Scrambling behind a tree, she tried to steady her racing heart. You cannot hide from me, the beast snarled. I am every fear you've buried, every doubt you've ignored. I know, she whispered, her back pressed against the rough bark. But I'm not running anymore. Summoning her courage, she stepped out from her hiding place. The beast charged again, but this time, she stood her ground. As it bore down upon her, she looked it straight in the eyes. You are a part of me, but you do not control me." The beast hesitated, confusion flickering across its face. Taking advantage of the moment, she reached out and touched its forehead. A surge of understanding flowed between them. The beast began to shrink, transforming into a small, frightened creature before dissipating entirely. Another fragment of the soul mirror materialized at her feet. She picked it up, feeling a newfound strength coursing through her. 2 trials faced, 2 fragments found. She sensed she was drawing closer to healing the fractures within her. The forest dissolved, and she was enveloped in darkness. A single spotlight illuminated a figure Edda herself, but different. This Alissa wore a cold sneer, her eyes sharp and calculating. She recognized this as her shadow self, embodying the traits she refused to acknowledge: selfishness, envy, resentment. "Look at you," the shadow mocked. "So self-righteous, so convinced of your bravery, yet you hide from who you really are." "I've accepted my pain and faced my fears," Alissa replied evenly. "You have no power over me." "Is that so?" The shadow circled her. "What about the times you've put others in danger for your own gain? Or the envy you feel toward those who have what you lost?" Alissa felt a sting of truth in the words. She had taken risks that endangered others, pushed people away out of jealousy or fear of intimacy. "You're right," she admitted. "I have those flaws. But acknowledging them is the first step to overcoming them." The shadow laughed. "You think acceptance is that simple?" "No, but it's necessary." Alissa took a deep breath. "I accept you as part of me, but I won't let you dictate who I become." The shadow began to waver, its form blurring. "This isn't over," it hissed before dissolving into smoke. The final fragment of the soul mirror appeared, hovering before her. As she reached out to take it, the 3 pieces merged, forming a restored mirror that shone with a brilliant light. The reflection that looked back at her was whole, complete, a true representation of all that she was, both light and dark. A sense of peace settled over her. The chaotic whirlwind of emotions and memories that had plagued her was gone, replaced by clarity and balance. The dreamscape around her began to fade as a gentle voice called her back to the waking world. Alissa opened her eyes to find herself lying within the ritual circle, the candles burned down to stubs. Allowance sat nearby, a knowing smile on her face. "Welcome back," the elder said softly. "I did it," Alissa whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "Yes, you did." The journey within is often the most perilous, but also the most rewarding. Alissa stood, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet in a way she never has before. The world seemed sharper, more vibrant. She looked at Ilawan. "Thank you for everything." "This is just the beginning," Ilawan replied. "Healing is a journey, not a destination." "But you've taken the crucial first steps." As Alissa left the elder's home, she felt a lightness in her stride. The village was waking up, the sun casting a golden hue over the rooftops. She spotted familiar faces as if friends she had kept at arm's length, neighbors she had barely acknowledged. This time, she greeted them with genuine warmth. She made her way to the village square, where a crowd had gathered around a traveling bard performing an upbeat melody. The music filled the air, and for once, Alissa allowed herself to be swept up in the moment. She tapped her foot to the rhythm, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "Alissa, there you are!" a familiar voice called out. She turned to see Marek, a fellow adventurer and old friend, weaving his way through the crowd toward her. "Marek," she greeted him warmly. "It's good to see you. I was beginning to think you'd vanished into thin air," he teased. "Where have you been hiding?" "On a journey of sorts," she replied enigmatically. "Ah, the mysterious type now, are we?" He eyed her curiously. "Well, if you're up for it, a group of us are planning an expedition to the Glass Canyons. Supposedly, the sunsets there are like nothing you've ever seen." She hesitated for a moment, the old instinct to keep others at arm's length tugging at her. But then she remembered the clarity she'd gained, the importance of connection. "Count me in," she said with a nod. "Excellent. We leave at dawn. Meet us by the eastern gate." Marek gave her a pat on the shoulder before disappearing back into the throng. The rest of the day passed pleasantly. Alissa visited the market, savoring the vibrant colors and rich aromas that filled the streets. She bought fresh fruit from a vendor who laughed heartily at her attempts to haggle. She even stopped by the blacksmith to have her gear inspected, engaging in light-hearted banter with the gruff yet good-natured smithy. That evening, she returned to her cottage. As she prepared for the journey ahead, she caught sight of the soul mirror resting on her table. Picking it up, she gazed into its depths. Her reflection looked back a steady, confident, whole. The mirror no longer felt like a mere object but a true extension of herself. The next morning, the sky was painted with hues of pink and gold as the sun began its ascent. Alissa arrived at the eastern gate to find Marek and a small group of adventurers readying their horses. They greeted her with smiles and easy camaraderie. As they set off, the landscape unfolded before them, rolling hills giving way to rugged terrain, the air growing crisper with each mile. The journey was filled with laughter and stories, a stark contrast to the solitary treks Alissa was accustomed to. She found herself enjoying the company more than she expected. When they reached the glass canyons, the sight was breathtaking. Towering walls of crystalline rock reflected the sunlight in a dazzling array of colors. As evening approached, the sky transformed into a canvas of fiery reds and deep purples. The group settled around a campfire, sharing tales of past adventures and dreams for the future. Marek turned to Alissa, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "You've been different since you returned," he observed. "More at peace." She smiled softly. "I had some things I needed to face about myself. My past. It's been a transformative experience." He nodded thoughtfully. "It's not easy, confronting what's inside. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding it." "True," she agreed, "but I've learned that the only way forward is through embracing all parts of ourselves, even the ones we'd rather ignore, makes us stronger." "Wise words," he said, raising his cup in a toast. "To self-discovery and new beginnings." "To new beginnings," she echoed, clinking her cup against his. As the night wore on, one by one, the group retired to their tents. Alissa remained by the dwindling fire, gazing up at the stars that blanketed the sky. She felt a profound sense of contentment, a unity with the world around her. The fears and doubts that once haunted her were now mere whispers, replaced by a quiet confidence. From her pack, she retrieved a small journal, a habit she decided to adopt to chronicle her thoughts and experiences. Opening it to a blank page, she began to write. "Today marks the start of a new chapter. The world is vast, and there is so much left to explore, not just in the lands that stretch before me but within myself. I've learned that strength isn't just in braving the unknown but in facing the truths we keep hidden. I look forward to the adventures ahead, whatever they may bring." Closing the journal, she added another log to the fire and wrapped her cloak tighter around herself. The night air was cool, but it carried a hint of warmth, a promise of the days to come. Over the following weeks, Alissa and her companions ventured through diverse landscapes, as lush forests teeming with life, deserts where the sands sang with the wind, and islands where the very air shimmered with magic. Each place brought new challenges and wonders, and with each experience, she felt herself growing, and not just as an adventurer but as a person. She found joy in the shared struggles and triumphs, the bonds formed over campfires and under starlit skies. The walls she had once built around herself had crumbled, replaced by bridges of understanding and trust. One evening, as they camped on a cliff overlooking a vast ocean, Marek approached her. "We're planning to head north after this," he said, his tone casual but his eyes searching. "But I've heard whispers of opportunities in the Southern Isles, rare treasures and uncharted territories. Thought that might pique your interest." She considered his words. The old Alissa would have jumped at the chance for solitary exploration, but now she found herself weighing different factors. "Are you suggesting we part ways?" she asked. "Not unless you want to," he replied quickly. I noticed how your eyes light up when you talk about venturing into the unknown. Didn't want to hold you back, She smiled appreciatively. "I won't lie, the idea is tempting, but I've realized that adventures are richer when shared. There's value in companionship." Marek grinned. "Glad to hear it. Besides, who else is going to keep me on my toes out here?" They both laughed, the sound carrying over the crashing waves below. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but Alissa couldn't help feeling grateful for the connections she'd formed. As time passed, word of their group's exploits began to spread. They became known not just for their daring quests but for their acts of kindness, helping villages rebuild after storms, protecting travelers from bandits, sharing knowledge with those eager to learn. Alissa took pride in these deeds, finding fulfillment in contributing positively to the world. One day, they received a message from Alawan. A messenger delivered a sealed letter bearing the elder's unique insignia. Retreating to a quiet spot, Alissa opened it. "Dear Alissa, I trust this letter finds you well. News of your journeys has reached even my secluded corner of the world. It brings me joy to hear of your continued growth and the light you bring to others. I wanted to share with you a discovery I've made regarding the soul mirrors. Your experience has unveiled new understanding about their connection to our inner selves. I believe there is more to explore, and I could use your insight. If your path allows, consider visiting me again. There is much to discuss. Warm regards, Alawan." The letter stirred a mix of emotions: curiosity, anticipation, and a touch of nostalgia. She shared the contents with Marek and the others. "Sounds important," Marek remarked. "Are you thinking of going?" "I am," she affirmed. "But I don't expect you all to change course on my account." "Nonsense," another companion chimed in. "We've followed you this far. Besides, it might be interesting to meet the one who set you on this path." And so, they adjusted their route, making their way back toward familiar lands. The journey was filled with reflection for Alissa. Returning to where her transformation began felt symbolic, a chance to close one chapter and perhaps begin another. When they arrived at Alawan's dwelling, the elder greeted them warmly. "Welcome, travelers. It's a pleasure to meet the friends of Alissa." After introductions and sharing of stories, Alawan and Alissa withdrew to a private room. The elder spread out ancient scrolls and texts, the air thick with the scent of old parchment. "I've been studying the soul mirrors extensively," Alawan began. "Your experience suggests they are not just personal artifacts but could be linked to a greater collective consciousness." Alissa listened intently as Alawan explained theories about how the mirrors might connect individuals on a deeper level, possibly even allowing for shared dreamscapes or collective healing. "It's fascinating," Alissa mused. "But what does it mean for us?" "It means," Alawan said thoughtfully, "that your journey is far from over. There is potential here to help many others, to guide them through their own inner trials, much like you did." The prospect was daunting yet exhilarating. "Are you suggesting I become some sort of guide?" "In a manner of speaking. You've walked the path yourself, and that experience is invaluable. With training, you could assist others in healing their fractured selves." Alissa considered the idea. It was a departure from her life as an adventurer, but perhaps it was the natural progression of her journey. "I would need time to think about it," she admitted. "Of course," Alawan agreed. "Whatever you decide, know that you have a place here." Rejoining her companions, Alissa shared the conversation. They were supportive, though curious about what it might mean for their future travels. "You've always been the one leading us into the unknown," Marek said. "Perhaps this is just another kind of adventure." Over the next few days, Alissa grappled with the decision. In the end, she realized that helping others heal resonated deeply with the peace she'd found within herself. She approached her friends with her conclusion. "I've decided to stay and learn from Alawan," she announced. "There's a calling here I can't ignore." They accepted her choice with understanding, each expressing their support in heartfelt farewells. "We'll keep exploring," Marek promised. "And who knows, maybe our paths will cross again." "I hope they do," she replied sincerely. With that, her friends departed, and Alissa embarked on a new journey of learning and teaching. Under Alawan's guidance, She studied the intricate workings of the soul mirrors, the mind, and the heart. She began assisting others in navigating their inner landscapes, finding profound fulfillment in witnessing their transformations. Years passed, and Alissa became known as a wise guide, much like Aladdin. Travelers sought her out, not for tales of distant lands but for the healing and insight she offered. She still ventured out occasionally, her wanderlust not entirely quelled, but her purpose had expanded beyond her own desires. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Alissa sat on a hill overlooking the village. The soul mirror rested in her lap, its surface reflecting the vibrant colors of the twilight. She thought back to the girl she once was, a fearful yet unyielding, isolated yet yearning for connection. She smiled, filled with gratitude for the path she'd walked at, the trials faced, the friendships forged, the lessons learned. Life, she realized, was a continuous journey of self-discovery and growth, and she was eager to see where it would lead next. As the first stars began to twinkle overhead, she rose and made her way back home, ready to embrace whatever the future held.